Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI Conversations Without Barriers. It is May the 11th. Happy Mother's Day to all those mothers out there. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Great weather across southern Ontario. Only to get even better tomorrow. Lots of sunshine, warm weather. So last weekend, out here talking about homelessness, and again, pushing that narrative. I think that's important to keep getting that message out there. Inadequate housing, the shortages of affordable housing has a profound impact on lower income families and individuals experiencing homelessness all across Canada. Here in London, Ontario, several organizations are working to address these challenges. These organizations, like London Cares, they provide street outreach, resting spaces, and housing stability. Youth Opportunities Unlimited offers housing services aimed at ensuring safe and affordable housing without barriers. Lifespin, they focus on creating real solutions to poverty, including affordable housing initiatives. The City of London Homeless Prevention and Housing works to find safe and affordable housing options for those in need. Vision Soho Alliance is tackling the affordable housing crisis with thousands of households on the subsidized housing waitlist. The lack of affordable housing forces many families into precarious living situations, increasing financial stress, and limiting access to essential services, making it harder for individuals to transition into stable housing. The inadequate housing can have serious long-term effects on families, impacting their physical health, mental well-being, and overall stability. Poor housing conditions, child development. Children raised in inadequate housing are more likely to experience cognitive, language, and socio-emotional difficulties. The instability of frequent moves or homelessness can disrupt education, leading to lower academic achievement and future economic challenges. The financial strain, families struggling with unaffordable housing often have to cut back on essentials like food, and also perpetuating cycles of poverty. The housing insecurity can lead to job instability, as individuals may struggle to maintain employment while dealing with frequent relocations. The community and social effects. Poor housing condition can contribute to social isolation, as families may feel unsafe or disconnected from their communities. Neighborhoods with inadequate housing often experience higher crime rates and reduced access to essential services. Physical health risks, mental health effects, long-term consequences. So what policies exist to address inadequate housing issues? There are several policies in place to address inadequate housing issues, particularly in Canada. The National Housing Strategy, Canada's National Housing Strategy, was launched in 2017 to ensure access to affordable housing for all Canadians. It includes funding for new housing developments, rental assistance programs, and initiatives to reduce homelessness. The National Housing Strategy Act, passed in 2019, recognizing housing as a fundamental human right. It establishes mechanisms for monitoring housing policies and ensuring accountability. The Federal Housing Advocate, part of the Canadian Human Rights Commission, examines systemic housing issues and recommends policy changes to improve housing conditions. The Affordable Housing Initiative, various programs aim to increase affordable housing supply. Rental Construction Financing Initiative provides low-cost loans to encourage the development of rental housing. The Rapid Housing Initiative funds the construction of affordable housing units for vulnerable population. The provincial and municipal efforts, local governments also implement policies such as rent control, housing subsidies, and zoning regulations to promote affordable housing. So the right to housing legislation in Canada was designed to empower individuals experiencing homelessness and inadequate housing by recognizing housing as a fundamental human right. It commits the government to implementing policies and programs aimed to ensuring access to housing for all. However, despite these efforts, inadequate housing solutions remain a significant challenge. Many households still struggle with affordability, overcrowding, and poor living conditions. The legislation also was helped by creating accountability mechanisms. The Federal Housing Advocate examines systemic housing issues and recommends policy changes. Encouraging community participation in individuals affected by housing insecurity can engage in discussion and influence housing policies. Establishing a rights-based approach. The National Housing Strategy Act requires the government to maintain a housing strategy aligned with the human rights principles. Yet critics argue that implementation has been slow and funding gaps continue to limit the effectiveness of housing programs. Many Canadians still face long wait lists for affordable housing, and the supply of low-cost rental units remains insufficient. Now, our premier here in Ontario, he seems to be determined to build the highway tunnel at a cost of 80 billion or more. Let me repeat that number again, 80 billion or more. That alone would solve the homeless crisis in Ontario. So this proposed Highway 401 tunnel, I call it Premier Doug's Ford Underground Layer project by the Premier, has been estimated to cost anywhere from about 60 billion to nearly $100 billion. Well, Ford argues that the tunnel would ease congestion and improve economic competitiveness. Critics have pointed out that such a massive investment could be better allocated to pressing social issues like housing and homelessness. Here in Ontario, we're facing a severe affordable housing crisis, with thousands of people on wait lists for subsidized housing and many families struggling with rent. If even a fraction of the tunnel's budget were redirected towards housing initiatives, it could fund affordable housing developments, rental assistance programs, and homeless prevention services. And the opposition leaders have also criticized the tunnel project, calling it a fantasy tunnel and warning that it could bankrupt the province. Some argue that investing in public transit and housing would provide more immediate and impactful benefits. Prime Minister Mark Carney has had a meeting with provincial leaders, asking them to provide them with their wish list, as though it's like, Christmas time. Public transit is obviously important. When we're building communities, more access to public transit and close by to get around to where you need to go. This so-called highway tunnel that Doug Ford wants to build would take 10 plus years or longer. If it takes 15 years to build, I mean, he wants to build a 30-mile tunnel under the existing highway that runs through Toronto. Costing anywhere from 60 to $100 billion. We could solve homeless by that time. Ontario, has been making efforts to address homelessness and housing shortages, but the funding allocated still falls short of fully solving the crisis. Here are some of the current investments. The Ontario government is investing $75.5 million to create more emergency shelter spaces in affordable housing units. An additional $202 million annually has been allocated for the homeless prevention program. The federal government is providing $250 million over 2 years to address encampments and unsheltered homelessness. The challenges and limitations, despite these investments, Ontario still faces. Over 80,000 people living in Ontario experiencing homelessness, a number that has grown by 25% since 2022. Long wait lists for affordable housing, with demand far exceeding supply. Municipalities carrying a larger financial burden as provincial funding has remained stagnant in real terms. Potential solutions: redirecting funds from large infrastructure projects such as the proposed Highway 401 tunnel could significantly improve housing accessibility. If even a fraction of the $80 billion estimated for the tunnel were allocated to housing, we build thousands of new affordable housing units, expand rental assistance programs, increase supportive housing for vulnerable populations. The number of encampments in the Greater Toronto Area has been rising. And as of March 14th, 2025, there were 283 encampments across the city, compared to 202 encampments the previous year. The city defines one tent as an encampment, meaning the actual number of unhoused individuals living in these spaces could be much higher. The housing first model has been widely recognized as the most effective approach to addressing homelessness, instead of relying on temporary shelters. The housing first prioritizes getting people into stable, permanent housing without preconditions, such as sobriety or mental health treatment. Once housed, individuals receive wraparound support services, including mental health care, addiction counseling. Homeless shelters alone don't solve homelessness. These are not homes, people. It's not a place to go live. They only provide temporary relief. They do not address the root causes of homelessness. Many people cycle in and out of shelters because they lack long-term stability. Studies show that stable housing reduces emergency healthcare costs and lowers interaction with the justice system. It's costing taxpayers an estimated they're looking at probably um, 10 billion annually. When you're thinking about the healthcare system, policing. London has like London Cares. They go around to these encampments, social workers, um, along with police. The policing part of it. They're looking, you know, for open drug use, open public drug use, and they're with a social worker. There's concerns about that as well, because people who do have an addiction, they need that hit. Services will be offered. The small quantity that the individual has, the police will confiscate it. And that concern, to me and advocates, is that they will just go into hiding to use whatever they're using, which will complicate things even more. Overdosing is another real concern. So rather than investing in more shelters, Ontario should massively scale up the affordable housing and supportive services. Again, redirecting these funds from infrastructure projects like the costly High 401 tunnel could build thousands of new housing units, providing long-term solutions instead of the short-term fixes. See, Premier Doug Ford thinks our tax dollars are his personal bank account. See, the Conservative Party here in Ontario, they have a majority government. They can pass legislation. They don't have to have community meetings to discuss proposals such as this big, massive construction project that Doug Ford is so bound and bent that he wants to do this. He'll pass it through legislation. He will not have any community input. This is not the government's money. This is our tax money. The existing policies, including this proposed 20 new shelters in Toronto, 20 new shelters they want to build in Toronto. The very first one, so one of 20, is scheduled to open up in 2027. Homeless shelters don't solve homelessness. Again, the housing first model has been proven worldwide to be the most effective strategy. Here in Ontario, we need to scale up the affordable housing initiatives instead of spending resources on ineffective shelter expansions. Reducing homelessness requires a massive investment in permanent affordable housing, not temporary band-aid solutions. Now, the wait list for housing in London, Ontario. The wait time for community housing in London, Ontario varies depending on factors like unit size, vacancy rates, and application date. However, in many cases, households have been waiting for more than 10 years for housing. For social housing, those with urgent status typically wait 3 years, while those on the regular wait list wait an average of 5 years. As of last year, there were 7,249 households on the wait list for subsidized housing in London. The number of people on London's supportive housing waitlist has remained high, still waiting for community housing. However, the number of people actually getting housed has decreased, meaning fewer individuals are successful in moving into stable housing. And additionally, those with urgent status who are supposed to receive priority placement are still waiting about 3 years for social housing, while those on the regular wait list wait an average of 5 years. The growing demand for affordable housing, combined with low vacancy rates, has made it increasingly difficult for people to secure stable housing in London. Now, so we need a call to action. And of course, there's ways of doing that with petitions, town hall meetings with city officials, petitions to the provincial and federal governments. Now we could do, I started one here. We scroll down here to where it would be. Oh, it's here somewhere. As I was scrolling down, I was scrolling by it anyways, but a message for advocating for the housing first model and stronger policies. Urgent action needed. Housing first is the only solution. Now, this could be sent right to the city, obviously, um, to the provincial government, to the city of Toronto, because they're um, building 20 new shelters in Toronto failed to provide long-term solutions. They only offer temporary relief, right? So the letter would be somewhere, something like would go something like this. So, dear recipient, so you could write this to the mayor. I'm writing to express deep concerns about the current approaches to homelessness in Ontario. The existing policies, including the proposed 20 new shelters in Toronto, fail to provide long-term solutions. Shelters offer temporary relief. They do not end homelessness. The housing first model has been proven worldwide to be the most effective strategy. It prioritizes permanent housing first without preconditions, followed by wraparound support services. Cities like Medicine Hat, Alberta, and Finland have successfully eliminated chronic homelessness by focusing on housing first. Ontario must commit to scaling up affordable housing initiatives instead of spending resources on ineffective shelter expansions. Reducing homelessness requires a massive investment in permanent affordable housing, not temporary band-aid solutions. Redirecting funds from large infrastructure projects such as the proposed 401 tunnel could fund thousands of affordable housing units instead of spending billions on a single highway project. I urge you to support policies that prioritize housing first and affordable housing expansions as the core solutions to ending homelessness. even as letters and petitions, can be very powerful. The petition to implement housing first policies, Premier Doug Ford, the Ontario Legislative Assembly, municipal housing authorities, urgent need for permanent housing solutions for homelessness. $80,000 people here in Ontario are experiencing homelessness. And that number is higher too because we have the hidden homeless. People couch surfing with friends, staying with relatives, sleeping in their cars. And here in London, we're using um, the by name count. So people who are accessing, these services in the downtown core, the homeless shelters and other social hubs. Others adapt the point in time count, which is insufficient too because they only do it once every 5 years. So if we get the by name count, people, so who are actively using these services, we can get the numbers as close as we possibly can. So 80,000 isn't off the mark. Statement of grievance. Ontario is facing a severe homeless crisis with over 80,000 Ontarians experiencing homelessness, a number that has grown since 2022. Tent encampments are rising in urban areas, demonstrating the failure of temporary solutions. And despite the millions of dollars being allocated for homeless prevention, these funds are not addressing the root causes. The lack of permanent affordable housing. The shelter system is overburdened, and individuals often cycle between shelters and the streets due to the absence of long-term stability. Last year, the Premier of Ontario, still the Premier today, Doug Ford, was closing down 9 out of 11 safe injection sites, creating a heart hub, um, so treatment centers for addiction. But closing down the safe injection sites first before these heart hubs are put in place. So putting the cart before the horse. Nine out of the 11 across Ontario. Here in the city of London, I don't know how many treatment hubs will be available or accessible. I haven't heard of any of them opening up as of yet, not just here in London, but across the province. I had a discussion a couple of weeks ago with a friend of mine. And he lives in the downtown core. And he mentioned, you know, seeing so many homeless people. And he thinks there should be, the correctional services should be dealing with homeless people. Military should deal with homeless people. They should go into the military. He's an educated guy. I was kind of shocked. That's two solutions that, we thought that might be adequate. First of all, the correctional services of Canada, they're ill-equipped to deal with people with mental illness and addiction. The military is ill-equipped to deal with people who have mental illness and addiction. The military is ill-equipped. Sometimes they can't even deal with their own internal problems. Never mind people who have an addiction and mental illness. Housing first is the initiative. It is the only way out of it. He says, "Oh, you must be the expert." I said, "I'm no expert." I said, "I do a lot of reading up about homelessness. As a matter of fact, I volunteered in a homeless shelter. I'm not an expert, but if you educate yourself, you begin to understand things a whole lot better than with somebody who doesn't read any books on it, don't do any research on it." The information is out there. You just need to do your homework so you can better understand the situation. And when I tell you that there's 80,000 homeless people here in Ontario, we are the most populated province. We are the largest province of the country. Those numbers are pretty close to accurate. Now, yes, they have city meetings. The general public can join in the city meetings at City Hall. This is about a week ago. Um, about a week and a half ago. The city of London. It's kind of mind-boggling too. And the reasoning behind it, I still don't even understand the reasoning behind their decision. And this decision was to remove portable toilets from encampments. I don't I don't know what sense that makes. I don't get it. Advocates are saying it's a human right violation. Man, I don't know how the city can, even get away with that. Yeah, they don't want the encampments. Communities don't want the encampments. But we're going to take something very important away from you as a privacy to go to the washroom in private. They had a big blow up, at City Hall over this. Advocacy groups and groups that are working tirelessly day in and day out. Mobile units going around to these encampments, making sure people have what they need. In a shortage of doing that too. I even went on online the other day, and it was for let me scroll back up to the top here. So London Cares, they provide the street outreach, resting spaces. So they also, you know, bring around some food, clothing, toiletry, hygiene, hygiene stuff. But they're not looking for volunteers at this time. There's something. There's over 55 tent encampments around the city. But removing washroom accessibility from encampments, I just can't wrap my head around that decision. The deputy mayor voted to have these portable washrooms removed. Now, you would think that the deputy mayor and the mayor would be in line with one another. One votes in favor to keep them there, one votes to have them removed. It's ridiculous. And yet here we are, still in this crisis. Slow and painful movement on getting people housed. The City of London, their goal is to build 600 supportive housing units over the next 3 years. We have 2,000 homeless people here in the city. 600 supportive housing units over the next 3 years. The homeless, it's going to decrease somewhat, but it's also going to increase. We're not going to be any further ahead in 3 years with just 600 supportive housing units. It's a start, but it fails to meet the needs. And like I said earlier, the city of Toronto wants to build 20 more homeless shelters. And the first one to open up in 2027. So when did they start that project? They started at the beginning of the year, so 5-6 months ago. It's going to take 2 years to build one shelter, and you want to build 20 of them. And you have the highest population of homeless in the entire country. Of over 10,000. That doesn't even make sense. Matter of we should be, you know, working on eliminating homeless shelters and building the affordable housing and the housing and housing with supports. And the Premier of Ontario needs to get off the idea that he wants to build this, 60 billion to 100 billion highway tunnel under the existing 401. I believe that, between 60 to 100 billion dollars would solve homeless here in Ontario. By focusing that money on affordable housing, housing with supports, healthcare. As the opposition is arguing that same thing, housing first, critics are saying, no, that's not the way to go with this project, this 401 tunnel. We can allocate this money towards housing and healthcare. We'll see what happens. But our voices have a say as well. You can write to your local governments. You can petition. You can show up for town hall meetings, city hall meetings. But you have to be respectful too. But you have to be stern in your message. I keep looking at the site, the city, what type of meetings are coming up. And when the general public, can go and say something before city council on that particular subject, whatever that case may be. So it just rotates around. So when we come back to the housing situation or the homeless situation and stuff like that, and then you have to look at the site on a regular basis. And then there's a process, to get your name in there. and then be chosen to speak before city council. But you can also do it in your own community with your neighbors. Put your heads together. Come up with ways of helping. Because homelessness isn't going away anytime soon. You drive around your cities and your towns and you see it wherever you go. Volunteer if you can. Look into the services in your cities that provide services to those who are unhoused. See if you can volunteer. But take care, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's going to be a relatively nice day. Blue skies here in southern Ontario. It's only getting better out there. It's going to be a really, really awesome day tomorrow in temperatures. It's going to feel like a summer day in spring. So get out there today because it's going to be in the low 70s anyways. Today it's going to be pretty nice too. So get out there and enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy your Mother's Day. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Take care. And thank you for joining me.